George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
God save the life of Imran Khan, the rightful Prime Minister of Pakistan, now held in the ISI, the Security Services dungeon in Islamabad. And God help Joe Biden, now that we can add a new family to the 5 families of the mafia fiefdoms in New York. It's the Biden crime family, exposed in all of its ugly detail. And God help Donald Trump, a woman he said he's never heard of, never set eyes on him, is set to be given $5 million in compensation for inappropriate touching. Seems like a high tariff to me, especially if he never actually met her. And Robert F. Kennedy is burning up the tracks with one indictment after another against the Biden administration, against the whole recent history of the deep state of the United States and its successive governments. And as for Rishi Sunak, well, he's getting it from me in this first 20 minutes of this, the mother of all talk shows. It is the global university of the airwaves. It is free of charge, and you get to speak back to the teacher. Fasten your seatbelts. It is the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
I have been warning on this show for more than a year of the imminent threat to the life and certainly the liberty of the rightful Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan. This week it came to pass. A gang of armed men kidnapped him entirely illegally from a courtroom where he was attending, as he was required to do, in order to get biometrically tested, like they didn't know who he really was. The armed men were called Rangers. They are a paramilitary force, but under the command of the Armed Forces of Pakistan. Indeed, the Armed Forces of Pakistan have long commanded everything in the state. The nexus between the ISI, the intelligence service of Pakistan, and the army, the top brass in Rawalpindi, is the only institution in Pakistan that matters. I should know I've been involved with Pakistani politics for more than 50 years. More than 50 years ago, I tried in vain to save the life of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the rightful leader of Pakistan, who was framed and then hanged by an earlier American satrap, General Zia-ul-Haq. I watched as my good friend Benazir Bhutto was repeatedly deposed, threatened, and eventually murdered on camera by the military brass of the Armed Forces of Pakistan. Don't try to tell me that anyone other than them were responsible for the murder of Benazir. Although I know and like Imran Khan and have known him and liked him, admired him for many years, I am not his party man. I'm not sure even that I would have voted for him in the last parliamentary elections. But I'd sure vote for him now, because I know a coup when I see one. And I know that Imran Khan was overthrown in a coup, not for any reason to do with internal or domestic Pakistani politics, but entirely because of his relationship with both Russia and China and his determination that Pakistan should be a genuinely independent player in the region as befitting a nuclear power with hundreds of millions of citizens and scores of millions of citizens living overseas. A great country, a great civilization, one that was deserving of respect, respect which has never been forthcoming. And the successive leaders of Pakistan have been willing for, in return, keeping their own seats, their own power, which overwhelmingly they have corruptly used for their own enrichment, to supplicate to the United States and do its bidding, whether in relation to Afghanistan or other things. So I'm not an Imran Khan party man, but I am in favor of democracy, and I could show you my medals. I was awarded the highest civil award in Pakistan almost 40 years ago, the Hilali Quaid-e-Azam, for my role in the restoration of democracy in that country after the demise of the aforementioned General Zia-ul-Haq. I also received the Hilali Pakistan, the second highest award in that country, for my work on the struggle for freedom for the people of Kashmir. I know a lot about Pakistan, and I know for sure that the only reason they have kidnapped Imran Khan is because elections, now overdue, imminent, would have swept him to power with a sufficient majority to finally set about transforming Pakistan in the ways that it needs to be transformed, breaking the back of military and intelligence power in that country, making a proper democracy of the place, as befits a great people. Now, asked about it in the House of Commons today, Rishi Sunak said that the kidnapping of the Prime Minister of Pakistan was an internal Pakistani matter on which he had nothing to say. But that's false, Mr. Sunak, on a number of different levels. First of all, if the kidnapping of Imran Khan is an internal Pakistani matter, why is the imprisonment of Mr. Navalny in Russia not an internal Russian matter? You are never done interfering in the internal affairs of other countries. Indeed, that's precisely the hallmark of Britain, which you currently, for the time being at least, lead. If the Uyghur question is not a Chinese internal affair, how come the destruction of democracy in a Commonwealth country with King Charles as the head of the Commonwealth not a matter on which you, as the British Prime Minister, can have a point of view? You, Mr. Sunak, are the Prime Minister of a country where the criminals conducting the armed kidnapping of the Prime Minister are actually living. If you like, I could take you to their sumptuous addresses in Mayfair. Our police officers on our taxes are guarding these people. The imported government that the American coup placed in power in Islamabad were all outside the country because they were all wanted for the crimes of corruption. The cabinet in Pakistan, which you say has the right to conduct its internal affairs itself, read like the front page of the Police Gazette. Every single one of them almost was wanted for high crimes and financial misdemeanors. And the conductor of the entire hellish orchestra is actually still right now living in London. So in what sense is this an internal affair for Pakistan? The king has a responsibility as the head of the Commonwealth to make clear his absolute rejection of the crushing underfoot in bloody shot and hail of the uprising currently happening in Pakistan. An unarmed peaceful uprising in Pakistan, seeking to secure the release of their leader, for whom they voted in overwhelming numbers, and for whom, if given the chance, they would vote again in still greater and more overwhelming numbers. Why is that not a matter for you, Mr. Sunak? Party workers, senators, women, children are all being gunned down right now in Pakistan. This is another American regime change operation gone disastrously wrong. And not in the back of beyond, not in some banana republic in the jungles of South America, but a nuclear-armed superpower in the Asian region, with a border with Iran, with Afghanistan, with India, a border with all the flashpoints in the world today. Hundreds of millions of people running wild on the streets of Pakistan with an armed force that is gunning them down with live ammunition right now as I am speaking to you. If that's not a matter for you, Rishi Sunak, for you, King Charles, what about the United Nations? What about the Security Council? Aren't you concerned that this will get entirely out of control? One regime change operation after another has turned into ash in the hands of the United States and the so-called international community. And how could it be otherwise? The decision to remove Imran Khan was made by doddering Joe Biden, who, if you saw the latest video of him, as I did an hour ago, wandering around looking for his exit from the stage, you'd think this man has been dug up from the cemetery, a broom put down the back of his jacket and made to look like he is alive. He was warning the world of grave consequences if America reneges on its indebtedness. Actually, the United States is fast losing the place on every single level. As Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been adumbrating today with devastating effect. So devastating, I have begun seriously to be concerned as to his lifespan. Robert Kennedy denounced Biden today, denounced Biden's predecessors, denounced decades, a half century and more of criminal behavior on the part of United States agencies against their own people, never mind against the peoples of other countries. It's high time that leaders in Europe began to ask themselves, or their people began to ask their leaders, why are you following this organized crime operation, otherwise known as the United States of America? But just when you thought that he might get away with it, the first report of Comer in the US Congress has given chapter and verse about sordid, personally criminal behavior in which the Biden crime family was involved during Biden's period as the Vice President of the United States. He was making hay while the sun shone on his part of the White House. He never expected to have to run for office again. He thought he was in the twilight of his political career, and so all caution was thrown to the wind. Millions upon millions and millions and millions of dollars, at least $10 million, was illegally, corruptly siphoned from foreign countries and foreign companies, all of it entirely concealed from the White House authorities, from the US Congress, from the American public, into the bank accounts of 10 members of Joe Biden's family. Hunter Biden we all know about, but we didn't know about the nieces and nephews and grandsons and granddaughters, some of them small children with millions of dollars in their bank account. Is there anyone credulous enough to believe now who the big guy really was? The one referred to in Hunter Biden's laptop, 10% for the big guy? Anyone in any doubt who the big guy was? Who could it be other than the Vice President of the United States of America, Joe Biden? This criminal behavior knocks into a cocked hat anything we have ever seen on the American public stage before. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. This is only the money that was extorted as protection money from foreign countries and foreign companies by the Vice President. What about now that he is the President, the really big guy? How much did his family members extort from these countries and companies, including Chinese companies? An administration that is foaming at the mouth against China was in receipt of millions of dollars from Chinese commercial entities going into the bank accounts of his nieces and his grandsons during his tenure as Vice President. What about Romania? Now, I know Romania. I'm probably the only person you've ever met that has a book published in Romanian. Romania is a watchword for corruption. People normally corrupt Romanians. But the Coma report shows that Romania corrupted Joe Biden. How about that? Romania gave $1 million to Joe Biden. He didn't declare it. It was hidden, concealed. What was that for? What protection did Joe Biden offer Romania for that $1 million? What was the trade-off? And they want to claim that Donald Trump cleared of rape, not that you would know it from the headlines that you have read, is somehow a bigger criminal than Joe Biden. They're both criminals. America is ruled by criminals. You can pick one criminal or the other criminal, but there isn't any doubt who is the bigger criminal. And that is the leader of the so-called Democratic Party in the United States of America, and the man currently sitting with his finger on the trigger in the White House. It is a stunning turn of events that we'll discuss with Garland Nixon and Alex Rubenstein in the later part of the show. I've only time to refer en passant to the Victory Day celebrations yesterday in Moscow. I just want to make this point. President Putin performed really powerfully, didn't he? Considering he has brain cancer and liver cancer and kidney cancer and stomach cancer and lung cancer and prostate cancer, considering he's got a withered arm, considering he walks with a limp, considering he might even be dead and is being covered by body doubles. He looked amazing, sounded amazing in Red Square. Why do I dwell upon this point? Because you have been told, and many of you have believed, the war propaganda spewed out against Russia, against Putin, over this last 15 months or so in particular. It was all a lie. Putin is not going to be overthrown. He is not terminally ill. He doesn't have a withered arm or walk with a limp, and he doesn't have any body doubles. They were lying to you. And as Robert Kennedy Jr. said in his miraculous series of tweets today, look them up after the show. When the United States denied that it was conducting illicit overflights of the USSR with spy airplanes, They continued to deny it until the Soviet government produced a man called Gary Powers, whom they had shot down over their territory, flying exactly the U-2 technology that was spying on the Russians. The American people were shocked that their government had lied to them. It is well attested back in the day. The problem is, neither the Americans nor any of the rest of us are shocked any longer. As Tucker Carlson said to more people in a short broadcast on Twitter than will watch the entire output of US terrestrial and cable television this whole week or month. We're being lied to. It's an industry of mendacity. The liars and the lying lies that they tell us are the biggest story of this age. That's why you're here tonight, because you know this is the place where the truth tellers gather. Prepare for some blunt truths over the next 1 hour and 40 minutes or so. It's the mother of all talk shows. Donald is in Inverness on Assange. Go ahead, Donald.
Hi, George. Good to hear from you again. I'm phoning about Assange, but really your audience is highly privileged to benefit from your international research. I mean, I've learned, tonight you told us about the misfired missile and the helicopter crash. We'll never hear that on mainstream news. Last time, Gonzalo Lira told us about Poland doubling its armed forces. These are very important pieces of information. Now, information is one thing, but what I want to do, George, is I want to raise the topic of conscience. But I want to illustrate it with an incident that I saw in a documentary in World War II. A U.S. soldier called Glenn Fraser had a Japanese officer's sword at his head, ready to chop it off to make him an example to others. And he was told that he would die for having his hands in his pockets in the cold weather. And did he have any last words to say? So this Fraser looked the fellow, this is the Japanese officer, looked him in the eye. And he told the Japanese officer that he could kill him. But he says, you cannot kill my spirit. He says, and my spirit will lodge in your body and haunt you until the day you die.
Very powerful, Donald. I too, like you, believe in the judgment day. I believe in the afterlife. I believe that we will reap what we sow. And I agree entirely with the point you make about conscience. I put it this way, that my conscience is my daily communion with God. And if I follow my conscience, I won't do wrong. And if we all reawaken our conscience, as you beautifully put it, then we will have no need for policing. We'll certainly have less need for policing. And heaven knows we could do with that. You know that they speak the best English in the world, in Inverness, and Donald is a good example of it.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Speaking of truth tellers, our first guest this evening is Peter Obourne, the Middle East Eye columnist and author of Assault on Truth, and also author of The Fate of Abraham and many other books. A grandee of English journalism, largely now unemployed in the pages of the mainstream British media precisely because of his integrity and fidelity to truth. He'll be here in a minute. We're just establishing a clear line with him. Here are our phone numbers if you want to comment on what I've said or haven't said. If you're in the UK or Ireland, it's 08081 965522. That's 08081 965522. And remember, it's entirely free of charge. Ditto in the United States and Canada. Toll free. +1 844 944 3344. That's +1 844 944 3344. And if you're in the rest of the world, which is most of you, of course, it's 44203 966 2625. Now we're running a poll, which 18,000 people have already voted in, and the show's only just begun. Who ordered the arrest of Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan? A, the army, B, the imported government, or C, the United States of America? And it's a damn close run thing, actually, between the army and the USA, although some would say that is actually no choice at all, a distinction without a difference. Now, Peter Obourne, alas, not in vision, but gloriously in sound, the great British journalist and fine cricketer, Peter Obourne, joins me now. Peter, I was saying earlier that I am not myself a supporter of Imran Khan and his party, but I know a coup when I see one. And I see that you wrote much the same earlier today, at least I read it earlier today. Give us the benefit of your argument, please.
Certainly I will, because I think that this has been gravely unreported in the British press. So Imran Khan was arrested yesterday, as you know, by paramilitary forces. Some people, some quite respectable advisors are saying it's more like a kidnapping than an arrest, but he was arrested. And in the time that has gone past, and Imran, of course, is the leader of the PTI, which is the main opposition party in Pakistan, and several very senior members of the PTI have also been arrested. And from reports, it's quite hard because internet's being stopped. You know, there's a real block on press reporting now in Pakistan. It looks like they're wrapping up a lot of the members. So this is an anti-democratic assault on the, and it's coming just 4 months ahead of a general election, which has got to be held under Pakistan law by the end of 2023. And Imran Khan is by far and away the most popular politician in the country, in Pakistan. So it's very troubling event, and there's been awful violence, protests. The Pakistan people appear to be turning on the army. There's horrible footage of them going into, you know, the sort of senior military places in Lahore and elsewhere. And so it's a troubling time.
Troubling indeed, not least because how vastly populous Pakistan is, its geostrategic position in the world, its possession of nuclear weapons, and a combustible mass of Pakistani diaspora in many countries in the world, including our own. And yet Rishi Sunak declared today that he had nothing to say about all of this, that it was an internal matter for Pakistan. What did you think of that?
Well, it's an extraordinary statement from the British Prime Minister. As you say, Pakistan has well over 200 million people. The British Pakistani population, people of Pakistan heritage, I think well over 2 million. And many of them go back and forth. They make a magnificent contribution in Britain. I know lots of them personally. Let's note, first of all, that Mr. Sunak and indeed James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, have no problems at all making commentaries on the internal operations of foreign countries. They're very free with their opinions of whatever's going on in Syria or Iran or Russia, anybody who's deemed to be an enemy of the British state. On the other hand, the silence on what is going on in Pakistan is quite extraordinary from the British government for a number of reasons. First of all, we claim to support democracy and freedom, and this is clearly an attack on democracy. Mr. Khan, whatever you think of him as Prime Minister of Pakistan when he's straight. He's not corrupt. I mean, that's certainly not compared to the mass of the ordinary Pakistan politicians. And these charges look like they're trumped up. And you would expect James Cleverly, at the very least, to have summoned the Pakistan ambassador and given him a dressing gown, saying, "What's going on? This is an attack. This is an attack on basic democracy, and Britain supports democracy." All the more so because, and I dare say quite a few of them are listening to your program, George, the British Pakistani diaspora population will be looking for that kind of leadership, that kind of statement that Britain is actually prepared to stand up for the values which we claim to believe in.
There's another reason why it's extraordinary, Peter. The organisers of it all are living in Mayfair with their ill-gotten gains in bricks and mortar in some of the finest streets in our capital. The British police are actually on 24/7 security duties outside these palatial apartments in Mayfair. So the former Prime Minister, whose brother is now the Prime Minister, is currently in London. In fact, if I'm not wrong, even the current Prime Minister is visiting his brother in London, if I'm not wrong, right now. They are members of the Commonwealth. It's our Commonwealth. Our King is the head of that Commonwealth. But we've got nothing to say about it. We never stop talking about events in Iran, as you say, or Mr. Navalny in Moscow, or other internal affairs of other countries. But in these extraordinary circumstances, we have nothing to say to defend the life of Imran Khan.
It depresses me beyond measure. And let's just look into the mind of the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly. Now, James Cleverly was asleep at the wheel when the Sudan tragedy happened. I mean, he seems to have been, even that every dog that barked knew that something was about to happen in Khartoum, but not apparently Mr. Cleverly. The Foreign Office was caught on the hop. We had to rely on foreign countries to get out British citizens. Now, he's asleep at the wheel on this too, Mr. Cleverly and Mr. Sunak. Fast asleep. Now, we got, I don't know how many British nationals there were in Sudan, maybe a few hundred. How many? I should dare say there's, as we speak, tens of thousands, and the country is descending into anarchy, according to the reports, which are coming out, because there's a huge suppression of press reporting, as you know, and of the internet. But and the British government seems to be clueless about this. It's not, and nor is it prepared to stand up and state that it believes in democracy. It's against the arrests of political opponents of the regime or the government in power. So it's morally we're all adrift, but also I think practically we're now adrift.
Now, the game would appear to be obvious, although I've been through this movie before, Peter, and it has sometimes ended in the death, the murder, judicial murder in one case, and extrajudicial in another. I have seen the murder of Pakistani leaders before, but let's avoid speculating about the worst case. The best case is that they're trying to put him out of these elections, maybe even outlaw his party from standing in those elections. That's a recipe for civil war, isn't it?
It's beginning to, look like something very serious may happen. you are right. You said you weren't a supporter of PTI, but one of Mr. Khan's party, one of the welcome things about it, I think, was that it challenged this sort of dynastic rule. The Sharifs and the Bhuttos had been really running the country politically for 40 years or 40 years. And these two dynastic parties, the PPP in the case of the Bhutto dynasty and the Sharifs MLN, it had been sclerotic. And also he was challenging, the visceral endemic corruption, which, has been a real sort of problem for Pakistan, as many other countries, by the way. So I think he was a very fresh voice and fresh figure from outside conventional power politics. And if you stop that, and he's also obtained mass support. He's fantastically popular at the moment in Pakistan, not just in a narrow elite group, but certainly among the urban middle class, but also mass support outside the cities. And to sort of try and stop him fighting the elections is certainly a recipe for autocracy, authoritarian rule. And you've seen, I think it frightens me what we appear to be seeing is these attacks on the army, which the army, like it or not, has been a symbol of stability and a force for stability in Pakistan ever since independence in 1947. And people have accepted that. So occasionally you have had dictators take power, normally backed by our American friends, but that has often been welcome. People have wanted to see law and order, and to see in the last 24 hours the mass, a lot of people turning against the army, which I believe is basically we got military law now. According to reports, which in the across much of the Punjab, up in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and apparently in Balochistan. I mean, it's a very, very frightening and dark moment, this potentially.
Indeed so. And the idea of these absconders, these runaway Pakistani politicians, whether in London or back now in power in Islamabad, calling anybody corrupt when they are a byword for corruption. Whatever else you could say about Khan, he hasn't filled his own pockets. He may have made mistakes in his policies. Some of his international relationships with Russia, with China, I approve of, but could understand why some would not. But the idea that he is the corrupt one is the pot calling the kettle black to an extraordinary degree, isn't it?
Well, let's add one other thing, George. The war on terror, where you were a tremendous voice, I believe, for good, and speaking out against the abuses, human rights abuses, torture, extradition, drones, all of that, which was part of the George W. Bush war on terror and persisted with by Obama. Now, Imran Khan, and this is one of the problems I think he now faces, really established himself by fighting against extradition, the use of killing through drones, and he was a force for good during the war on terror, and it didn't endear him, I think you'll find, to the United States. And then, if you look I follow Pakistan politics quite closely, and his downfall seems to have followed the fall of Kabul, and it's documented. You've always got to be careful about what you say about Pakistan politics. There are so many different layers and different interpretations, but he seems to have been in conflict with the Americans about the consequences of Kabul. Americans always wanted to have overflights of Pakistan airspace for launching operations, and I think I'm right in saying that Imran Khan was opposed to that, and he was certainly very upset with the Americans for withholding funds which belonged to the Taliban, the new government in Afghanistan, and so he was not afraid, and this separated him from the run-of-the-mill Pakistan politicians. He was never afraid to criticize the United States and its policies. Now, whether that is what led to his removal, when he ceased to be prime minister, about a year ago now, after he lost the support of several of his MPs, about 30 of them, I think, from memory, and there was quite a lot of those close to Mr. Khan think that was, you could see the hands of the American embassy in Islamabad in that. I already can't. I'm not there. I wouldn't like to say, but you could. It's given the litany of interventions you've just listed, it's certainly not implausible.
Peter Obourne, as always, thank you for your wisdom on the mother of all talk shows. Peter Obourne, great English writer and commentator. Who ordered the arrest then of the Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan? Well, on Twitter, 49% say the army, 10% the stooge imported government, 41% say the USA. On YouTube, it's 15% say the army, 13% the stooge government, 72% the United States. In Telegram, the army, 5%. The stooge government, 14%, and the United States, 81%. Extraordinary differences here. And on the YouTube community poll, where 12,000 people have voted, Army 13%, imported government 8%, USA 80%. My goodness. Whether the US ordered the arrest of Imran Khan or not, such is their reputation in the world that the overwhelming majority of people believe they simply must have. How extraordinary a situation is that. Now, as you know, if you watched on Sunday, my good wife Gayatri and I were in Berlin recently. We were looking at the rise and fall of fascism. It is 90 years exactly, I think, exactly to the day, 1933, May the 10th, the book burning began. Take a look at this. In this very square, on this very day, 90 years ago, the most infamous of the book burnings took place. The German philosopher, more than 100 years before, had stated that where they begin burning books, they will end burning humans. How prescient was that? Anyway, on the 10th of May, 1933, the newly empowered Nazi Party, the filth led by Adolf Hitler, piled every book by a Jewish author or by a communist author, including the works of Karl Marx, who was both Jewish and communist, and they burned them in a ceremonial funeral pyre. Who were the book burners? This is important. The book burners are now described as National Socialist students. But in fact, it was the teachers and lecturers at this University of Humboldt who led and organized the book burning. Those lecturers, after the war, were dismissed by the new communist authorities here in East Germany. But the students, of course, probably perished on the Eastern Front or guarding the Führer bunker in the last hours. But the sight and sound and memory of the burning of what turned out to be 20,000 books, were burned right here has lived forever. And of course, the German philosopher was right, that the burning of books was merely the harbinger of the burning of humans. And almost 100 million humans were burned in the period 1933 to 1945. Just think about that. This wonderful piece of art, political statement art, are empty shelves capable of housing exactly 20,000 books. Of course, you can burn a book, but you can't burn the idea that is within. You can burn the Jewish people, but you cannot destroy Judaism. You can make a big bonfire of socialist ideas, but it hasn't destroyed the socialist idea. Ironically, the very same Humboldt University now has a flag on top of it. That flag is the flag of Europe's last remaining state, where the Nazis are actually in control of military and political events. Take a look over there. Give me a call on that or anything you've heard. 08081 965522 in the UK and Ireland. In the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. And if you're in the rest of the world, 44203 966 2625. Now, there's almost not enough time in the rest of the show for me to talk to Garland Nixon, because I really don't know where to start. Do I start with Biden or do I start with Trump? Do I start with RFK Jr.? I don't know. Let's hear what he has to say. Garland Nixon, the radio talk show host and supreme political analyst, one of our favorites here on Moats. Welcome. Let's start with Joe Biden, can we? The New York Post, which broke the story of Hunter Biden's laptop and lost its Twitter account for the privilege, is now banned from attending Joe Biden's presidential events. And the reason's not hard to find, because they are, again, leading the pack, although the rest of the pack doesn't seem yet to be following, exposing more and more and more malfeasance and maybe even high crimes of the Biden family. What say you?
I think the Biden team is they're fairly wise to try to shut the mouths of those who are exposing their current legal woes. I think the biggest case against Joe Biden right now is in Congress. Apparently, there are a number of members of Congress who are arguing that they have a FBI whistleblower that has the FBI whistleblower is claiming that the FBI has evidence that Joe Biden was involved in some kind of a bribery scheme, that he actually received money from some foreign entity while he was vice president of the United States. That's part of the allegation. The other part of the allegation is that the FBI has had this evidence for some time and has not acted on it, which of course would point to the FBI being involved in a cover-up. Additionally, another major issue is the connection between the Biden administration and actual election interference in the 2020 election. There are allegations that have been made by a former CIA assistant director that one Anthony Blinken was the driving force behind a letter that said 51 former intelligence officials believed that the The Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, admittedly with no evidence whatsoever. So I think the Biden team is probably hiding from the New York Post, but they're going to have to do a whole lot of hiding for a long time because it looks like the skeletons are making their way out of the Biden closet.
Robert Kennedy's been talking a lot, 24/7, because he's running for president. And some of the things that he is saying are pushing the envelope. If someone told you Garland Nixon said them, or that I said them, you might not be surprised. But that a Kennedy said them, and a man running for president said them, is pushing the boundaries very considerably. He has, and I don't have time to list them all, but he has accused the CIA of being involved in the murder of his uncle, President Jack Kennedy, his father, Senator Robert Kennedy. He has outed, it's the first time I've seen this number, a $5 billion spend back in 2014 to overthrow the government in Ukraine, and then to hand-pick a stooge government by Victoria Nuland and other functionaries of Barack Obama and Joe Biden's administration. He goes from one issue to another, making the most pungent accusations. I think killing any reluctance on the part of people like you and me to get behind his bid. I mean, whatever else you say about him, he's a force 9 gale exposing these crimes. And we should get behind him, shouldn't we?
Well, I think he's a very interesting candidate, and, I'm looking into supporting him at this time. One of the things that I think that's interesting about the things that RFK Jr. has said is that for the most part, these things are they're very easily researched and very easily verified. He came out with this $5 billion number, but those of us who have been researching this know that the neocons literally bragged about that years ago about spending the $5 billion. So the interesting thing about the dynamics of politics in the United States today is that RFK Jr. comes out and says things that are, as they call OSINT, open source intelligence, things that we can all find out, things that many of us in the alternative media have been reporting on for years, and we all know, but the mainstream media won't touch it. And he comes out and says these things. It's very, very refreshing to hear this. But it's a sad state of affairs when a person who comes out and speaks the obvious is some kind of an outlier. And and obviously, as you probably know, he has been ignored a great deal by the mainstream media here for obvious reasons.
Yeah, although it'll not be possible. A guy with the name recognition that he has cannot be silenced forever, but we'll keep abreast of that. Let's talk about another man. Unexpectedly, now, just like Kennedy, shining a very powerful light on things that the powerful don't want us to see. I refer to Tucker Carlson, who seems to have broken the mold of American television broadcast journalism. He was bound by golden handcuffs to the tune of $25 million not to say another thing on any other platform until his contract was up. In other words, Mr. Murdoch was honoring his contract and going to pay him $25 million, but he must keep silent. He has shredded that and taken a new platform with Elon Musk on Twitter. Now, you and I have had many issues with Elon Musk, but this is a pretty powerful combination, isn't it? Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk.
It's actually a very powerful combination, and I think this will increase the flow of viewers away from mainstream media towards alternative media. It's going to benefit those of us in alternative media who push back against the mainstream against the mainstream lies and try to put forward stories that we can substantiate. I think what's going to happen here, and if you already look at Fox News is losing viewers like crazy. Whatever, I've been saying for a while that whatever platform that he moved to would grow exponentially. And I think it's going to be really good for Twitter. Personally, I'm glad he chose Twitter because Elon Musk seems considerably less inclined to support, the kind of censorship that we've seen on other platforms. So I think it's perfect for him. I think it's good for all of us. We can watch him, and we can, I also want to see what happens with Tucker Carlson now that the restraints are taken off him. Was what he was doing on Fox as far as he will go, or will he take it to another level and just let go? I have a feeling that it will be the latter. I'm looking forward to the new iteration of Tucker Carlson.
Now, finally, Garland, Donald Trump was in court. I must say this case crept up on me. I hadn't been following it. I was still thinking about his last case. All I knew was that he said he had no idea who this woman accuser even was. And yet the jury, whilst clearing him of the far more serious charge of rape, nonetheless found him culpable, not guilty because it's a civil case, but culpable for a sexual assault, which was later explained as forcible and unwanted sexual touching, and fined Donald Trump $5 million. What can you tell us about that case?
A couple of things that are interesting in this case. Number one, this is the second time that the plaintiff, Jean Carroll, has sued Donald Trump. She sued him earlier, and that got hung up in court because there was some discussion as to, at the time, she was making claims against him when he was in office, and it was never cleared up in court as to whether she could sue him while he was acting as a public service in his official capacity. In 2020, here's what's interesting. In 2022, the New York State Legislature passed a law granting a 1-year window so that victims of former sexual assault cases could bring forth their assertions to court. It is my understanding in evaluating this that that's the only reason she could move forward with this case. And one could possibly infer from that specifically they passed that law so that she could move forward. I'm not saying that's why, but I'm saying that someone could certainly infer from looking at that law in New York, that particularly the state that it's in, that they did that so that she could bring these charges. So he's found guilty of, not guilty, but it's found that it's more likely than not that he was guilty of, that he committed battery and defamation. Keep in mind, for those of you who don't know U.S. law, in a criminal case, the standard of proof for a finding of conviction in the U.S. is beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. In a civil case such as this, it's simply a preponderance of the evidence, meaning that it's more likely than not that it happened. It's 51% versus 49% that it happened. So it's not exactly a finding of guilt. It's basically like you won an argument, people listened to it and said, I think it's more likely that this person is right than wrong. So at this point, Donald Trump can appeal. In civil cases, most of the time, the appeal will center around some kind of a legal error. So the likelihood of winning some kind of an appeal is not strong. He could also appeal the number and say that was too high for a number of reasons, but looks like this thing is it's kind of dying out.
Will it impact Trump's potential run for the presidency?
I don't believe it will at all for a number of reasons, not the least of which being it was brought in New York State. It was brought in a jurisdiction that's openly hostile towards Donald Trump. So people support Donald Trump will certainly take that fact into account. It will also be seen as, and forgive me if I'm freezing up here, I think it will be seen as a political move against Donald Trump. It's so far out where there are a lot of things that are going to happen. So I really don't think it will affect those who would either vote for Donald Trump, or in the case of Joe Biden, what he has to be concerned with is people in his party who don't show up to the polls for a variety of other reasons that we don't have enough time to talk about today.
We don't. Thanks very much, Garland. Despite the electronic interference, we did get the picture. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. In the next hour, we have a superstar guest, Alex Rubenstein. You definitely want to hear him on the subject of targeted assassinations. But first, let me take a quick break. As I say, how lucky we are to have the audience that we do. 1 million people every week watching all or part of the mother of all talk shows, and most attentive to what they hear, and many of them truly brilliant students. It's quite humbling, actually.
Oh, George, blessings upon Ukrainian. It's the metamorphosis, man, or metamorphosis, the intimations of immortality experiences. George, I like what you said. I love a lot of things you're saying. You know, your daily communion with God is through your conscience. I wanted to comment on that. That's beautifully said.
Your Socratic method on the on-air university is very beneficial, and I can only speak personally. I have appreciated, because I had called last time in regard to the general strike, and you helped to really refine my understanding of that from a different point.
The alternative point of view. When I heard that last week, and again today, I had this kind of visceral gut reaction to it. And I know what you mean by that. And, you know, the Moats audience knows what they mean by that, because we're all informed citizens. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. For the masses who don't necessarily follow geopolitics, let's say, they're going to listen to whatever the mainstream media tells them. And for them, anything that's alternative, the automatic kind of reaction is, oh, okay, it's a crackpot view, it's a conspiracy theory, it's an extreme view, when really it's not. It's, let's call it what it is. It's fact-based commentary.
Hello, George. Nice to talk to you. By the way, you deserve every penny you get, because you're the only person who speaks the truth over all the fake news.
I wanted to personally thank you for bringing such great guests that speak about the situation. Also, I have become more aware of people like Max Blumenthal at the Gray Zone and others who do update us with the correct information about Syria, and this has just been such a great eye-opener. So thank you.
You are the people who have stuck with this show and transformed it into a truly global university, where it can be said that every month at least 4 million people will watch this show. They're in Greece, they're in Canada, they're in America, they're in England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, they're in New Zealand, they're in Australia, they're in Norway, Denmark, Sweden, they're in Finland. They're all over the world. They're in Africa with a call from Nigeria. This is a truly global phenomenon, and that is down to you.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's take the first calls of the evening. Lucy is in Virginia, USA, on censorship. Let's hear from her. Lucy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. Hi. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. And actually, what I want to talk about is Donald from Inverness. Donald from Inverness, who gave the wonderful clip that you have in between when you're taking a break. He spoke.
Yes, he's a fine man.
It was January, wasn't it? I think.
Yes, he's a fine man.
that.
I saw him. I saw him not that many weeks ago. I met him for the first time in the city of Glasgow. He's an outstanding figure.
Superb. Well, he certainly made an impact on me. And I've been thinking about what he said ever since. And with you bringing up today VE Day, Imran Khan, the absolute disgrace of that our collective leadership in the United States, and I dare say in the West general. I wanted to say that I believe I've been thinking much about what he said about conscience and what do we do? What do all of us do? What do we do as just regular people? Maybe too old to do a lot of fighting in the streets or do a lot of, carrying signs. What I mean by fighting in the streets is carrying signs or doing this kind of thing. And it's come to me that what is lacking in this world and what every single one of your viewers can summon is a spirit of honor. If every single person who feels that what is going on is wrong, from what has happened around VE Day to what has happened to Imran Khan to what is going on in our miserable governments, if we summon the spirit of honor and think to ourselves, I am going to do the honorable thing, I'm going to say the honorable thing, I'm going to ask the question of others, what's the honorable thing here? So that it puts the question in their mind. That is
very beautifully expressed. Yeah, very beautifully expressed, Lucy. The religious people, including myself, have the following, if you like, rubric. We must oppose that which is dishonorable with our hand if we can, with our tongue if we cannot, and if we can neither oppose it with our tongue or our hand, we must curse it in our hearts. And I think that if you believe in God, that God expects at least those three things from everyone confronted by the evil that is in the world. Those of us who can still raise our hands must do so. I'm one of those, lucky enough to still be able to raise my hands. But when I can do that no longer, I pray to God I will still have my tongue and I will fight for honor that way. Thank you, Lucy. In Virginia, we prioritize women callers and we prioritize first-time callers. And if you're a woman first-time caller, you've got a very good chance of getting on the show. Thank you, Lucy. Next is Harry in West London on Pakistan. Go ahead, Harry.
Yeah, hi there, George. Good evening. Thank you for having me on tonight. I know I know, hi there. I know we're talking in a negative light at the moment, given the recent turn of events in Pakistan, the lack of law, democracy, and everything. But there's just 2 points I want to shed on. First is the Western foreign policy of the West in general, and secondly, it's the status of Nawaz Sharif. So basically, let's discuss the point about Nawaz Sharif. So you've got a convicted felon sat in the UK. Who was given 4 weeks of leave for medical reasons, who is fully able to travel to Europe with his family, go to Saudi Arabia and return to the UK. So my question is, why is the UK government hosting him in the UK, a convicted felon, someone that's been charged, who's been sent to prison and has come out for medical treatment? Why can we not send him back to the UK? And why is the taxpayer paying for his protection left, right, and center? You're probably fully aware of all the protests that are happening day in, day out in Avonfield in London. So that's the first point I want to ask you about. What's your take on that?
Well, I mentioned it myself in my monologue and also raised it with Peter Obourne, our first guest. It's one of the main reasons why Rishi Sunak was lying today in the House of Commons when he said he couldn't get involved in this case because it was a domestic Pakistani affair? Well, it isn't, for a whole number of reasons, not least because it is being coordinated from Mayfair, from the luxury apartments to which you alluded, and guarded by the Metropolitan Police. So it's no longer an internal Pakistan affair. It is a British affair.
And George, I completely agree with you. I think everything's been cobbled because Pakistan's army, throughout its history, has had corrupt generals from the inception of Pakistan, and they've been easily wooed over by the West. Hence why that's the reason why they want to keep Nawaz Sharif within London, so you can dictate the policies in Pakistan. And I think that's the root cause of the problems. And just speaking about Mr. Sunak, even with him, he's a supporter of the RSS in India, who have got an anti-Pakistan agenda as is. So he's got political interest in itself to destabilize Pakistan. So that's the whole reason why the West are trying to put Pakistan in this situation.
I don't think. I don't think these are the whole reasons. But the first, certainly, the Nawaz Sharif point may very well be a part of the reason. I disagreed with Peter Obourne earlier when he said that the army in Pakistan had been a force for stability, and he implied that there had been the odd period of military dictatorship. But as a matter of fact, more than 50% of Pakistan's history has been under military dictatorship, and even the periods of civilian rule have been punctuated, as on this occasion, by effective coups from the military changing the political guard, putting one party in over another party. So from my point of view, the army in Pakistan are not the solution, they are the problem. And their intelligence services equally are a problem. And one of the things that they are most worried about is if Imran Khan is re-elected, with a landslide majority, as I'm perfectly sure he would be able to use that mandate to change Pakistan forever, to abolish these so-called institutions, which in fact merely institutionalize corruption and dictatorship. Harry, thanks for the call. Mohammed is in Leeds on the same subject. Mohammed, welcome.
Thank you very much, George. I am originally from Pakistan. I actually came to this country over 20 years ago, and I know you since. I'm very, very grateful that what you have, the sacrifices you've made to stand for the truth, and I mean, so much you've done to carry on with. It's impressive. You're a legend. So I'm from Pakistan, so I know a little bit. I've been in my student life. I was in politics, so I have seen it how the puppet game is played in Pakistan. So the army is playing whole setup in the background when there is a political government. So they usually use some sort of religious parties to topple the government. So no prime minister in Pakistan has completed 5-year term except for the Bhutto, which was killed by army by using the code. So no other prime minister has completed its term. So how they work is, for example, previously in 1990s, they used Jamaat-e-Islami to create a propaganda like they're corrupt, Nawaz Sharif is corrupt. So within 3 years, Nawaz Sharif government is terminated. And then Benazir is corrupt, the same Jamaat-e-Islami. After that, they used NQM, which was puppeteered by army also. And in this process, lots of people got killed. And then now they have another faction they've created, or it might be automatically creation of time, but they're using it. Army is using it. It's called TLP, which actually acts as anything which is against the Prophet. They will make lots of protests, but they will only make protests when it's a government which is disliked by army. So this party will come into play. So they are using that party now at the moment. And all the politicians in Pakistan, corrupt politicians, they are actually profiled. They have compromising evidence, ISI and Army, they have their compromising evidence, whether it's audio, video, financial transactions, whatever. Generals are themselves corrupt, but they blackmail other people. So little information about ISI. It is a huge organization which has hundreds of thousands of employees. 11 major generals control it. And on top of that is a lieutenant general. Hundreds of thousands of employees it has. And they control judiciary, media, politicians, everything. So the Pakistani people thought army is a uniting force because that's the propaganda we've been fed all along, that all the politicians are corrupt, inept. It's only army which is keeping this country together. But by stripping naked the other politicians and other people, making their video with the families and sending to their families, which has happened in Pakistan in the recent months. The ISI goons, they have made the video of the people's families and send it to their families to blackmail them. So God knows what else they're doing, but this has come out. So these people have actually fallen to the extreme lows, Pakistan Army. And we people ignored by listening to their propaganda that, oh, this is the army which is keeping this country unite. And now we understand actually the Bangladeshi, when the East Pakistan, there was a civil war, this army actually did things, very bad things to them. That's why they fought against it. So now we understand. It's too late, but now we understand what army would have done in those days when there was no social media. So I end my this talk on only on one sentence, which Mullah Zaif, he was the ambassador of Afghanistan in the year 2001 in Islamabad. So he wrote his book in 2010, My Life in Taliban. In that book, he wrote few sentences about Pakistan Army and ISI. He said that these people humiliated and treated me worse than Americans. So that describes Pakistan Army and its ISI fully.
Mohammed, great call from Leeds on Pakistan. If you want to have your say, please call the numbers that are on the screen and that I have already announced. The super chats are coming in. Thank you very much for donating. Nasri Akli is a regular donor and sends now another 20 Canadian dollars. Thank you, Nasri. Traitors, not the US, are to blame, he says. Without them, the United Snakes of Anarchy is crippled. And Doc Jazz, a great supporter of the show, sends another 50 AED and says, Israel News 13 headline, quote, with the approval of the Prime Minister, women and children were killed in the attack, unquote, had to be retracted under the popular pressure as Israelis are allergic to the truth. And Lars Svensson, another great supporter, sends Swedish krona and says, I'm back. I don't have a number though, Lars, but I'm sure I'll get it. Thank you. In any case, Abi Chappie, great name, sends 10 British pounds. Toy Chung sends 158 Hong Kong dollars. And Kanda Strike sends 6 Canadian dollars and says, the cabinet read like the front page of the Police Gazette. GG, this was tremendous and hilarious. Thank you for your wit and rhetoric. Thank you. And Dinwa sends 10 Australian dollars. If Julian Assange is the ace of spades, you, GG, are the king of hearts. Your impact on the world will forever inspire courage, truth, and honor. Thank you. Thank you for your very moving lines. I'm glad that my children will hear them. Here is Mohammed in Turkey on Pakistan. We'll be talking about Turkey on Sunday. Mohammed, on you go.
Yeah, I'm on the call. Hey, George, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. What would you like to say?
Yeah, basically, I want to start off with what happened 11 months ago when the CIA and Biden backed the American government overthrew Imran Khan. And let's retract to 2 days ago when the Pakistani deep state allegedly arrested the Prime Minister, the ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan on the behalf of the Americans. And I would extremely like to condemn their behavior. I believe that the United States should be called the United States of Terrorism, given the fact that most of the countries they've bombed to shed have been Muslim countries, majorly speaking. And now let's speak about what's happening in Pakistan. Most of my friends are protesting in Islamabad, Karachi, Lahore, all of the major cities. And they are telling me that they are being tear gassed, that the internet has been completely blocked out, that the police officers were initially using rubber bullets, but now they're shooting protesters with live rounds. Not only that, George, they have shot kids, and not like in their legs or hands or something to just make them run off or something. They shot them in their heads, brain wounds, and you can see the imagery online. Those innocent kids were killed by this fascist regime on behalf of President Biden. At least this is the way it seems. And the world is completely silent. Let's take Rishi Sunak. The British government has always been talking about Pakistan for the last 50 years. Whenever there's a problem, even if it's a small women's rights problem or something of that sort, they would always condemn that behavior. But now that you have Pakistan's largest party, its leader, our ex-premier, has been arrested, and we're at the brink of civil war, the military shooting people, allegedly, and so much is happening. Rishi Sunak says it's an eternal matter, which really shows us that his priorities are somewhere else. Maybe he's backed by the left. Maybe Shahbaz Sharif being in London at the same time when Rishi says this are interconnected. So overall, George, I think that the viewers that are listening to you must definitely know that what's happening in Pakistan now must be condemned. They should protest in any and every way possible. They should raise their voice for Imran Khan, because if they don't do that, and a nuclear power, let alone the fact that Pakistan is strategically important in Asia, if we go to civil war, then I'm sure the United States will use that as a precedent to somehow deploy their troops on our borders and say, oh, their nuclear weapons are safe or something of that sort. Or worse, they'll try to assassinate Imran Khan and cause anarchy anyways. So yeah, George, I just wanted to say that thank you for your platform, and I really hope that the people of Earth stand by Pakistan in this hour, because we need all the help we can get. Our government is against us, our army is against us, our police is against us.
I mean, thank you, Mohammed. In Turkey, there are elections coming up fast in Turkey. The US is determined to see the defeat of the current president, Tayyip Erdogan. That's a good enough reason to support him from my point of view, but we'll see what happens at the weekend. Now, the very last of a very short video where I visited the Russian War Memorial in Berlin, where it all ended. Take a look. Eternal glory, says the monument, to those who fell resisting Hitler fascism and its invasion, not just of the Soviet Union, but all of Europe fell under the jackboot of Hitler fascism. And it might still rule today if the Red Army had not triumphed. First at Stalingrad at enormous cost, the cost of millions of people, civilians and soldiers. The partisan struggle, not just in the lands of the Soviet Union, but in Yugoslavia, in Italy, in France, in Greece. Those who behind the lines took up arms against fascism. This incredible memorial to the liberation of Berlin in 1945 by the Soviet Red Army has suddenly become controversial. These Russian tanks that are here, Russian guns, this Russian war memorial has become controversial. There are voices in Germany demanding that this place be closed, that these war monuments be moved. But if not for the people commemorated here, fascism would still be ruling in Germany, and not one Jew would be left alive, not one Gypsy, not one Sinti, not one disabled, not one Slav would be left alive. They would have by now created through their systemized, industrialized slaughter, the ethnic and religious cleansing of humanity. That's a big, big issue. And all I'm saying, you don't have to have the same feelings towards the Soviet Union as I have. You don't have to love Stalin or Zhukov or the Red Army. You don't have to. You don't have to love Putin, definitely. All you have to love is peace. And I wish not to recreate all this all over again. I wish not to have World War III because you've forgotten what happened in World War II. Almost 100 million people lost their lives in World War II. 27 million of them, the peoples of the Soviet Union. 20 millions of them, the people of China, the forgotten victims in Western discourse. Victims of Japanese fascism in an ironclad alliance with Hitler fascism and Mussolini. This level of sacrifice, how could it have been forgotten? How could you have forgotten it? I was born 9 years before I was born 9 years after the end of the Second World War. There was still rationing. I was still playing as a child amongst the air raid shelters that had saved our people from the Luftwaffe's bombardment. Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister of Britain when I was born, so I cannot forget it. I have lived my whole life under the shadow of the events that are commemorated here. By the grace of God, I have 6 children, 5 of them young children. And my oldest child has 5 young children of her own. Am I supposed to remain quiet as the world is dragged into a cataclysm even worse than this one? 100 million people dead in the Second World War will be nothing as compared to what will happen if we have a third world war. It'll be a thermonuclear war. It'll be over very quickly, and there will be nothing left alive on this dear green planet of ours if it happens. And we are just one step away from it happening. What do I have to say? What more do I have to do to wake people up to the possibility that if it happens, none of us will ever wake up again? Now, real Alex Ruby is described here as an investigative reporter, but that doesn't tell you half of it. He is a wizard at investigative reporting, a brilliant writer, a brilliant investigator, and working at the most brilliant of all the investigative reporting bureau in the world today, the one and only Grey Zone News. Alex Rubenstein joins us again now here on the mother of all talk shows. Alex, we want to talk about the situation that now exists on targeted assassinations. Let me set the context. The authorities, not any outliers, the authorities in Kiev have announced that having blown up the daughter of somebody they didn't like, having blown up a blogger in a St. Petersburg cafe, having now blown up and gravely wounded a novelist inside Russia and killed his driver, that the Ukrainian regime intends to attack and kill Russians and their propagandists anywhere in the world. That sounds like a declaration of war throughout the world, international terrorism to me. How do they get away with that?
Well, they get away with it because the entire NATO order is on their side, and Blinken himself, Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, has essentially greenlit attacks inside of Russian territory by Ukraine, asked by David Ignatius in relation to the second attempt on Vladimir Putin's life via the drone attack on the Kremlin building, whether the U.S. would criticize such attacks inside Russia. Anthony Blinken said in response that this was a decision for Ukraine to make for itself, and essentially that the U.S. has no role. I don't buy that. I don't believe that Vladimir Zelensky can even use the bathroom without approval from the United States. But you see this kind of escalating attacks inside Russian territory. Many of them don't get reported outside of Russia, and I found one incident in the course of one day. A Telegram news channel in Russia documented 10 attacks in just one day on the border region. But so most of them are confined to the border region, but you have these ones that do go further into Russia. You have these car bombings. You have the bombing of a public event in St. Petersburg at a cafe. And it's, you have to imagine that Ukraine is resorting to these kinds of tactics because it's not able to win in a sense of conventional warfare.
So what we're talking about is ISIS 2.0, really. This is the counteroffensive, a new wave of ISIS-style terror attacks.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And again, you see this war targeting intellectuals. And so it's not just going after, rank and file soldiers. It's an attempt to win the information war by assassinations. So it is really sick, and it is the same kind of thing that ISIS would do. For example, taking out religious leaders of opposing Islamic sects, of opposing religions, and waging that kind of psychological campaign against their adversaries. And one other similarity that I would point out is the use in these attacks by ISIS and by the Ukrainian Secret Service of Western-made weapons. You had, for example, in the first assassination attempt on Russian President Vladimir Putin, a Ukrainian-made drone that was strapped with Canadian-made C4 explosives. You've had in these drone incursions in the border region many documented incidents of American Switchblade drones being used, and these are very easy ways of taking out civilian infrastructure and conducting psychological terror on the Russian population. For example, you can probably buy a commercial drone for, say, $800 USD, spend a few more $100 on C4 explosives and duct tape them together. So you see this kind of guerrilla tactics that are, really meant to terrorize the Russian population. And I just don't think that I think that it changes the calculus, because there's going to be a situation where if these drone incursions continue, the Russian population is going to become even more supportive than they already are of the war, because the war is coming within their territory. So it really opens the door for further escalation. It is itself escalatory, not to mention how the Russian government has not attempted to take out Volodymyr Zelensky. They've kind of let him be, and now Ukraine is making attempts on the life of their president. You can see that it's almost intended to provoke a response, to escalate, and it really drives home the message that you put out just before this interview right now.
Well, of course, it hasn't worked up till now. Vladimir Putin is showing almost Chinese levels of inscrutability. The playing down of a drone landing on your roof in the most fortified place in Moscow, the heart of government in Moscow for hundreds of years, in all political systems. No retaliation for it. Putin would have been fully entitled to, under the self-defense strictures of international law, to react, but has not. This extraordinary forbearance, is it popular in Russia, or is the president under pressure to go much further and harder?
Well, I'm not so sure. I don't follow the polling, on a regular basis. But what I would say is that Russia has not in the past been shy of responding. For example, when the Ukrainians conducted a suicide bombing of the Kerch Bridge, Russia responded by, for the first time, targeting Ukrainian infrastructure in a meaningful way by taking out their electricity system. So one has to wonder with specifically the second attempt on Vladimir Putin's life, whether it was intended to provoke a response, whether it was almost an attempt to have the Russians target Zelensky so that he could be replaced. That's kind of where my mind goes with this, because otherwise it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. As for the Russian view of this, again, I don't think it's going to be tenable. I raise this issue repeatedly. Imagine for a moment where Russia is providing weapons and equipment to Cuba to conduct drone attacks from the area spanning from Florida to Washington, D.C., to the White House itself. Cuba would be obliterated overnight. So Russia has not done that. You almost have to admire the restraint that they're showing. But on the other hand, you have an adversary in Ukraine where, as I pointed out in my recent articles on national media, you have open calls for terror attacks. You had this Ukrainian banker, Vladimir Yatsenko, who is a fraudster who funneled billions of dollars from the average Ukrainian citizens' bank accounts into that of Igor Kolomoisky, the main financial backer of Zelensky and of the Azov Battalion. And he's going on Kolomoisky-owned national television calling for basically putting out a bounty for terror attacks on Red Square on Victory Day. He offered $500,000 USD, $500,000, for any drone manufacturer that could attack that parade. And then you have just days later this UNIAN news agency. It's partnered with Western outlets like Der Spiegel, the BBC, lots of high profile international media outlets they have relations with. And they put out a poll on their Telegram channel after the car bombing of Zakhar Prilipin, if I'm saying his name incorrectly, I apologize, asking which Russian intellectual should be next, giving a list of like 6 or so names, including Margarita Simonyan, the editor-in-chief of RT News. So these are not just people that have writing backgrounds or journalistic backgrounds and have put on military fatigues, but actual journalists working inside Russia, have not been participants in the war. And again, it just drives home the level of psychological terror that the Ukrainians are putting out on wide across their own country through their biggest media outlets.
Well, I recently picked through the still extant rubble of the television station in Belgrade, which NATO unashamedly bombed in the middle of the night, killing tea ladies and makeup girls, as well as journalists and broadcasters. And that rubble is there as a monument. So what you're really saying, Alex, is we are against terrorism, except where the terrorists are our terrorists, and we're for journalism not being a crime, except when it's journalists of whom we disapprove, from Julian Assange in the dungeons at Belmarsh to Russian journalists who can be murdered with impunity, even using Western-supplied weapons, and there will be no condemnation or even note of regret issued from Western capitals. There's a word for all this, isn't there? With a capital H, hypocrisy.
Yeah, that's right. And again, just to drive home this point of a situation, an imaginary one where where Cuba was being armed. I mean, that would by Russia to attack the U.S. That would be not only Cuba's own death sentence, but it would be considered an open declaration of war by Russia against the U.S. So, you know, again, it just shows the level of restraint that Putin is not responding in kind, and you know, it shows over and over again that the West has no interest in de-escalating this war and you know, making a ceasefire, making some kind of peace agreement. They only want to escalate, and they're doing whatever they can and supporting Ukraine and doing whatever it can to ensure that this only becomes more and more deadly for the people of Ukraine and disastrous for, you know, the economies in Europe, the United States, and you know, everywhere else. This is going to be a paradigm shift on a level that we have not seen, and it's going to leave Ukraine basically a giant version of this, you know, news station that you just described, you know, completely leveled and ready to be bought up by foreign investors.
Alex Rubenstein, how can people follow your work?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at RealAlexRuby. That's RUBI. I have a free Substack newsletter where you get previews of all my articles that I'm doing for the Gray Zone, so you can stay up to date. That's realalexruby.substack.com. And of course, I can't encourage people enough to follow everything that the Gray Zone puts out, because I do believe that we are unparalleled, unrivaled.
Yeah, you'd be a fool not to.
And George,
you'd be a
George,
fool
thank
not
you
to.
so much. I love your show, and the endorsement you gave at the beginning was so meaningful to me. Keep up the great work. You're really doing something special here.
You do. Thank you so much, Alex Rubenstein of Grey Zone, a wonderful guest. Who ordered the arrest of Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan? Well, 20,000 people have voted. You've got a few minutes to get your vote in. It is overwhelmingly believed by 20,000 people that it was the US government that ordered the kidnapping of Prime Minister Imran Khan. Let's take some more calls. Kay in Leeds wants to talk about Pakistan. Go on, Kay.
Good evening, George. How are you doing today?
All good, by the grace of God. What would you like to say?
Well, George, going by recent events with Imran Khan, our former Prime Minister, is absolutely devastating. The whole population of Pakistan and overseas Pakistanis, whether they're America, United Kingdom, everywhere, we are all devastated to see a former Prime Minister get dragged out from a court to prison as if he is such a criminal. And it's very devastating what's happening right now as well in Pakistan. It's absolutely crazy. It's like a genocide is happening in Pakistan, where little children, teenagers, and old women, the elderly, are getting affected as well. Of course, this is a peaceful protest, but the army officers and the police officers are going absolutely insane. We've just got recent reports now from my friends and family in Pakistan that the soldiers are actually disguised as civilians. And they are attacking them in such a way with bullets on their head, and it's just unimaginable and disgusting. The recent conversation the lawyer had with Imran Khan was, make sure you tell the public. This is Imran Khan's words. He said, make sure you tell the public whether it's martial law or Asim Munir law. Do not stop protesting until you get the word of law out. And that's what the public is doing. He's got a great support, and this is nothing but a dirty politic game to make sure Imran Khan does not be involved in the upcoming elections.
For sure, it's transparent. Thanks, Kay. Very emotional call. I'm sure we could all feel your pain. Carlos is in Puerto Rico and wants to talk about Taiwan. That's quite apposite. Carlos, go ahead.
How are you, George? It's such a pleasure here talking to you.
It's, you know, I was just thinking as soon as I saw your name, Carlos, that if China was arming the Puerto Rican separatists and sighting missiles on their territory and sailing their warships around Puerto Rican waters, how America would take to that.
Well, imagine that. I was thinking about that the other day. Should we need to ask China for our freedom?
Well, why not? The ball's on the slates,
really,
as we say in Glasgow.
We were a colony of Spanish. We became a Spanish treasure of war in the Treaty of Paris. And from there, what? We're nothing. We're just a thing in the Caribbean. Nobody speaks about us. They speak about Taiwan. They speak about Cuba and Venezuela, but nobody speaks about, you know, our brothers like Guam that are in the same limbo that we are. I mean, I am an American citizen. In a way, you know, can I vote for Biden? No, I need to move to the United States if I want to vote for Biden. And yet, you know, my nephew, if Biden decides to go to war against China, my nephew needs to go to war with China. Even though my nephew has never voted for Biden or for Obama or for Trump. Should we ask China for our freedom?
Well, you've got more chance of getting it from China than you do from Joe Biden. Carlos, very powerful call from Puerto Rico. Hassa is in Karachi, in Pakistan, on the front line. Hassa, what would you like to say?
Good evening, George. It's great to be on the show with you right now. So
Thank you.
basically, the reason I wanted to call and let you know the current situation of Pakistan. Right now in Punjab province and KPK, there is a total internet blackout. It is very hard to get authentic information. That's what's going on the roads of Lahore and Peshawar. There have been reported killings. A lot of civilians have been reported who have died on the front line fighting with their own Pakistani army. It is such a, what can I say? It is such a unfortunate disaster that we are facing right now in Pakistan when we are made to fight our own army. I mean, we know that we have been, like, I am a very big supporter of Imran Khan.
Let me say, Hassa, you don't have to agree. Might be unwise for you to do so, but you've always been fighting your own army. The difference now is that the people are fighting back. The only purpose of the Pakistan army for almost all of its existence is to repress its own people, not to fight others, not to defend the country from others, but to repress its own people. For the most part, they have done that successfully. They could divide and rule between families, between parties, between provinces. But here now we have Imran Khan, who has mass support in all 4 provinces. This is rare. This is unusual. So they cannot play one province off against another. The difference now is that the people are standing up and fighting. And I'll say a few words on that towards the end of the show. But you have no choice now, Hassa. You really have no choice but to stand up or forever hold your peace and forget about democracy, forget about freedom, forget about development, forget about getting rid of the old political cliques and regimes that have milked you dry. They've bled you white over half a century and more. Last word to you, Hassa.
Yeah. So basically, you are absolutely correct but this time the difference is that people are standing up for themselves. They want to end this chain of actions that have been happening since last 75 years. They want to prove that they are now going to get independence from their own this chakra of things happening around them for a very, very, from generation to generation. And let me tell you that this destruction is happening for the generations coming up, because now nobody wants to become a part of that army. Nobody wants to become a part of that institution, because now everybody knows that they are the ones who have been corrupting the core of Pakistan through and through. And army has never had been instability. Like Pakistan has never been instability, even if it's within army or if it's a normal government. But right now, as of now, Pakistan is in martial law. You have to know that.
Yeah, it's,
because
this
they
is open
they might not announce
military
it.
dictatorship.
But this is martial law. They should, like, closing down the internet. We do not have access on YouTube. We are closed down on Twitter. We are not able to provide proper information. Whatever we are getting information is by the word of mouth, by the word of people who are each other's supporters right now. Do you know right now there had been a very big bomb blast in Lahore city, and we don't know how many people have been died because of that. We don't know what's happening. This is, and I heard what Mohammed called you from Leeds, and he was telling you that how Imran Khan would be, accused as an extremist. He will be accused as a religious extremist, and how he will be executed and how things will happen. Through your show, I would like to tell the entire world, whoever is listening right now, Imran Khan will be executed. He will be held. He will be held maybe by judiciary or by the army court, but he will be executed and he will be killed. So everyone should know that we are trying to support him as much as we can, but we do need people to support from outside Pakistan, to international levels. Right now, human rights have been are being violated, and
there's no
women,
human
children,
rights anymore.
every person. Yeah. So
But Rishi Sunak thinks it's all an internal affair. Hassa, stay safe in Karachi. Rob is in Toronto, in Canada, but on the same subject. Go ahead, Rob.
Evening, George. Perhaps I'm foreshadowing to your closing comments and what you're about to say. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the whole Pakistan situation. Like you, I've been following it for the last year or so whenever he was ousted from power. And I knew from the start that it was going to end up very badly. And it looks like we could be heading that way. And to your previous caller, I think it could get very, very desperate there very quickly. So I was just wondering, where do you see this going, given where we're at now, where Khan is in handcuffs and there's no going back now?
No, and thank you for that call, Rob. It does indeed feed into what I was going to say in conclusion, so I might as well say it now. Hassa said it to you from Karachi, the southern port city that I know so well, that they intend to kill Imran Khan. I have never been in any doubt about that because he's too popular to be allowed to participate in the elections. And if he participates, he will win, and he will win big. And having won big, he will have a mandate to deal with the corrupt criminals that have plunged Pakistan, a country I love, people I love, into this bloodshed and despair. I vacillate between anger and sadness about this whole affair because all of it could have been predicted. Indeed, I predicted it. I told you here on this show on the very first occasion after the overthrow of Imran Khan that this is where this would lead. They're in the position, as Shakespeare put it in Hamlet, steeped in blood so far. Is it bloodier to go on or to go back? That's the problem for the military. They are now steeped in blood so far. Do they carry out a full-scale, murderous military coup in the knowledge that it might well provoke, finally, in Pakistan, a civil war, such as occurred in the early 1970s when Pakistan broke up into two separate parts and Bangladesh was born? Are they really going to murder their own people as they murdered the Bengalis? Maybe so. If they are, will others permit it? If they are, will they prevail? After all, the army is made of soldiers who are humans. They're somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's husband. They have to answer to the civil society from which they come. They have political opinions. In the normal run of things, many of them will be sympathetic to Imran Khan, certainly sympathetic to the idea that if democracy means anything at all, it must mean that the people may choose their government and replace it with another in normal democratic forms. But one way or another, the military has a decision to make. I'm not talking about the generals, corrupt, bent double with the weight of the gold of their medals from wars they never fought, never won, bent double with the weight of the gold that they have stolen from the people of Pakistan during their military careers. That's the purpose of getting to the top of the army in Pakistan, so you can steal the people's wealth and go off to a retirement in Geneva or somewhere else. The generals, forget about them. The people of Pakistan have to create circumstances in which these generals run away now. They have to work on the fraternization with the individual soldiers to persuade them not to fire upon the people, who are, after all, their people. So approach the individual Jawan as a friend, beseeching him not to empty his magazine into the great mass of the people now gathering on every city, street, every town, village, hamlet in all Pakistan. Every highway is lined by millions of people on the march to try and save their leader's life, but to save something even more important than their leader's life, to save the idea of Pakistan. It is not worthy. It's not a land of the pure now. It is not worthy of the name. It is not worthy of the religion in whose name it was established. It is certainly not worthy of anything that could remotely be called democratic. And this is the moment. As Khan Sahib just said from inside the prison walls, though he's not even in a prison, he's entirely illegally being held at the headquarters of the ISI itself. There's every reason to believe that he'll be shot trying to escape, or he'll jump out of a window, or any of the ways that tin pot tyrannies describe the demise of those who torment them. Who will rid the generals of this turbulent priest? Who knows? Maybe an individual soldier, maybe someone who will be described as a rogue, lone gunman. There's only one way to save the life of Imran Khan, only one way to save Pakistan, and that is mass power. not thousands, not even hundreds of thousands, but millions of Pakistanis must take to every street. The army doesn't have enough bullets to kill everyone. Just as the millions forced the overthrow of the Shah of Shahs in Persia in 1979, so the people of Pakistan must force the removal of this martial law administration or die trying. It's been a somber and serious mother of all talk shows, befitting a global university of the airwaves. I'll be back, God willing, on Sunday at the earlier time of 7 p.m. UK time, when we'll follow all of these stories and all the stories that will break between now and then. Thank you for watching. Come back on Sunday and bring another viewer with you. Why don't you? Good night.